Hello and welcome, everyone, to the Beacon of Light podcast. Please pardon my froggy voice, but it is that winter time. We are very excited to have Miss Sylvia here with us tonight, and she's going to discuss her book called Testing Positive. But before I start talking to her, let's jump into this.
I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now.
And we're back. Welcome, everyone, again. Sorry for the little froggy voice, but we're going to push forward and welcome to the show, Miss Sylvia. So, Sylvia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, April, and good evening to everyone who's listening and participating. What can I tell you? I am an occupational therapist by training and a professional, what I call an activational speaker. Perhaps by accident, I think by destiny or divinity, because I believe it's what I'm supposed to be doing on this planet. And I speak on topics that have to do with health and well-being and pretty much cover any topic that relates to personal health and corporate health. So I work with companies to build better cultures. I do leadership training. I provide injury prevention services to companies, but I also do the personal health side of things. And then recently, an author.
Fantastic. And as this recent endeavor as an author, that is something that we're really excited to talk about tonight. And your book is called, let's pull it up here, Testing Positive. So, what an interesting concept. For all of you who read the blog on Monday, she shares a little bit about that. But for those of you who might have missed that, go ahead and share a little bit about why this became one of the names.
Well, it of course started, and the reason I say of course is because if you've read the blog, you know that this came as a result of what happened during 2020. And so many people don't want to talk about it anymore, but it still has relevance to how people behave and how people respond to stress today. It's going to be a very long time before our nervous systems let go of 2020. So I'm just going to call it out. This started in 2020, and it was a reaction to many circumstances that all sort of came together to create this perfect storm of misery and suffering and difficulty in my life. So it was a year of incredible stress, moving, a forced move, a divorce. They say, and I don't even know who they are, that there's these 5 Ds that relate to like really horrific circumstances for humans: death, divorce, disaster, disease, and depression. I pretty much hit all of those that year. So I also lost my income because of the pandemic. I was diagnosed with breast cancer completely unexpectedly, and then had to deal with surgery and radiation and all the uncertainty that went with that. Looking for a place to live when all the housing prices were just skyrocketing, and offering on 6 houses and losing them all, and then finally getting a place to live literally within weeks of 2 weeks of having to find a rental or a home. So there was a lot of things that happened in 2020 that were really, really difficult for me. And as a stress management expert, I'm an international speaker on this topic. I was using everything that I had at my disposal, all of my knowledge, to keep my head above water. However, there was one thing that came out of this incredible struggle that was relatively new to me, and that was setting daily intentions for how my day was going to go and how I was going to show up to that day. So this began as my private therapy, and I called it, "I'm testing positive. Would you like to join me today?" And it was a social media campaign to get us all to stop thinking about the word positive as something so terrifying. Because during COVID, testing positive for COVID was almost a death sentence, or at least we feared it was. So the phrase testing positive became terrifying. And so I wanted to shift my mindset and the mindset of the people that follow me into remembering what the word positive is all about and how we could use the energy and the promise of that word to change our experience and to gain some control during a time where we had no control. So every day I would do a post. It had an inspirational quote, and then I would write a little post about how I was going to put that concept into action. And I invited people to join me. And, you know, at the time, a marketing expert said to me, you probably shouldn't be doing this daily. It's kind of a lot. I'm like, this is my therapy. I'm doing it every day for me. How it affects other people is up to them. I didn't go public with my diagnosis for months. But when I did, and I shared the fact that this was my therapy, people really got it. And it literally saved my life on so many days and weeks and months of social isolation, financial stress, emotional distress, physical stress. Like there was a lot going on. And this was an anchor every single day. It gave me control every single day. It allowed me to create with intention every single day. I didn't wait to see how the day would go. I created the day for me. And at the end of the pandemic, I had 2 years of all of these beautiful posts, and I decided to take them, sort through them, choose 365 of them, rewrite them, some of them completely, same concept, add some journal questions, and then put it into a tome. It's a large book, and it's about a 20 or 30-second investment of time daily to create the kind of day you want and to put the power back where it belongs. And that's in our hands. It is up to us how the day goes. And so that was my labor of love after the pandemic, was to create some sort of legacy and tool, very practical, easy to use tool for other people to get where I had gotten, which was in thriving. Life is good. My health is good. I have vitality. I still have small things that I'm working on to sort out, health issues that I'm working on to sort out, but life is very good for me. And part of it is because I've made it that way.
Very intentional. The concept of going through going through life in a victim mentality, that whatever comes is just going to come at you. You have no sense of hope, no sense of power, or looking at the world and thinking, what can I do with what I have, with what I know, and get something started? There's a difference there. And for anyone with faith, if you've also started that day with a connection of the divine, that's really going to help, so that you're not waking up waiting for whatever to crash in on you. And I feel sad for many people that's life at that time. And I can say that because I've also experienced that. What's going to happen today? Because other people might be within your life, within a marriage, within your coworkers, whatever, you don't know what they're going to do. And if the day or the hour is anticipated on what their response is going to be,
Mhm.
then you're not proactively taking a sense of idea and of control, because you're not trying to control them or the situation. It's controlling the response. It's controlling the pathway to how you will discuss things or not discuss things with other people. And it's very different. So I congratulate you on writing these things down, compiling them together, and allowing for people to know that there is so much more than just waking up and wondering, "Well, what's going to crash on me today?"
Right. And the other thing, April, is that I think we look sometimes at the concept of self improvement or self awareness or change as this mountain that, how am I ever going to climb this? Where do I begin? Like, it's daunting when you don't feel like you're in a place where you can, drum up the energy to put one foot in front of the other. So I get that. I made this so tiny and so bite sized and so snackable because it's what I needed. Some days were so difficult, so unbearable, that the 30 seconds I invested in finding a quote, and it's an interesting process how I found quotes too, which I'll tell you about, that resonated with me, and then thinking about how I would operationalize that, and then jotting it down in a post and putting it across my platforms. That was minutes, but it changed hours of my day. It was magic. It was absolutely the smallest little bit of magic that was like the tail of a kite that I could just hang on to and kind of glide through the day feeling like I had some power and control. And an interesting aspect of how I found the quotes is that I didn't find them. They came to me. So I would sit in meditation quietly every morning and sort of feel. I used to, and I still call it the divine download. I would get this divine download of some sort of feeling or some sort of little spark of something. And I would quickly hone in on what that feeling was. Like, was it hope? Was it surrender? Was it giving up or giving in? And those are very different things, and neither of them are negative. Because you can give something up that you really need to give up, and you can also give in to something that is meant for you. And I would chase that thought, and a quote would literally come to me, and I'd be like, that's it. That's what I need to work on today. And so there's the quote. So all of those quotes none of them are random. None of them were by chance. None of them were, I don't know what to write about today. I'll just like, I'll take that one. None of them were done that way. They were given to me to give to myself and to give to you.
That is really, really powerful to be an instrument in the divine. And I'm sure answers to many prayers out there, because it was such a strange time to live in. And like you said, the effects still kind of ripple out. And when you've had those experiences, the impact of that is, it can be generational unless you make some of those changes. So having that divine download, allowing, well, being brave enough to share it with other people, not because um, an expert said this, or hey, this is the formula for that. You were just like, clear the mechanism. This is
Yeah.
for me. I'm going to put it in. Oh, you benefited. Fantastic. Wonderful. And I think in those quiet ways, that's how many of us can have those changes. It seems like when people are screaming at us, we tend to tune that out, or it ramps us with too much fear or anxiety. But
Mhm.
when the quiet power comes in, it's laced with peace
Yeah,
and with hope. And that's how you know it's really good.
absolutely true. And for so many of us, we have so many things to do that we forget to take these quiet moments for ourselves. And when you say to people, you should exercise for 30 minutes a day, or you should take 30 minutes a day to meditate, or you should take an hour to go for a walk every day. These are huge blocks of time for some people. That's literally a mountain. I like, where will I squeeze out an hour? But can you squeeze out 30 seconds? That's different. Can you squeeze out a minute? That's different, right? It just sits a little easier with people who are already overwhelmed. Those are the people that need the book, right? The people who are struggling to find their control and regain their power. Throwing something heavy and hard at people when they're struggling never works. But if it's easy and powerful, that's magical. And this was magical for me. And the science behind this is so freaking exciting. Neuroscience has proven that we can rewire the brain. We absolutely know that. There's lots of studies that prove that when we give small, daily, regular positive inputs into the brain, in the form of gratitude, in the form of positive intention, in the form of mantras, in the form of prayer, we change the geography of the brain such that in some studies, in 3 to 4 weeks, people became more positive in their outlook. We actually rewire the brain to look for evidence of positive things instead of always evidence for negative things. The brain has a negativity bias. It is built in to the survival mechanism of our brains, but we can actually not unwire it, but we can rewire and detour towards becoming more positive first and seeing the world more positively first. You take 10 people, take them to a window, 50% at least are going to look out the window and find something wrong with the view. Oh, it's too sunny. It's too rainy. The water's too wet. The sun is too sunny. It's cloudy. It's gray. The streets need cleaning. And the other half are going to be, what a beautiful spring day. Oh my gosh, it's so crisp and cold outside. It was so refreshing to walk outside. Like, they'll find something positive in it. Who's wrong? Nobody. They're both right. The difference is the negative thoughts we now know cause elevations in cortisol, our stress hormone, which we also know in large amounts over the long term can have terrible effects on human health. Definitely a precursor to disease and a driver of disease like cancer and many others. And we also get elevations in C reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation. Literally, a negative thought can do this to you. A thought changes our physiology. With my audiences, I actually prove this to them by taking them on a brief meditation that ends in them eating a huge chunk of juicy, ripe lemon. And half of the people in the room will be making a sour, awful face, a grimacing face. And when I asked, how many of you felt that buzzing behind your ears or a salivation response? 50% will put their hand up. I asked them, where was the lemon? And inevitably, somebody, they'll give me every answer but the real answer. But inevitably, somebody will say, in my mind. That is the power of your mind. It can turn on your endocrine system with a thought. In the absence of anything to digest, your body is preparing to digest. It's absolutely remarkable. If you think that a negative thought cannot physiologically harm you, it absolutely can. And researchers have shown that on average, we have 80,000 thoughts per day, or pardon me, 60,000 thoughts per day. Of those 60,000, 80,000, or pardon me, 80%, it's late. It's late over here in the Northern Hemisphere. Of the 60,000, 80% of those thoughts are negative. And now 90% of those negative thoughts are on just a feedback loop. They're repeating. Just fathom that. Fathom that math for a moment. That could be you with a small drop of poison in the water system, one drop at a time, 80% of 60,000 and 90% of those on repeat. That's frightening. And we have control of that, by the way. We absolutely have control.
The power of knowing that you have the control to change things like that, like our thoughts, that can be terrifying for people because I don't know how, what do you mean? I don't know how to turn off the negative record. For in my second book, Out of Darkness, I called that negativity a shame shadow. And what I had to realize is that how our shadows cast. You can only have a shadow if there's light. And I finally had this awakening of I've just been looking at the shadow the whole time. If I just turned my head to where the light was on me. And instead of looking that way, I kept looking at the darkness. Like, oh, my Landry. And so once I shifted that, the whole concept and the negativity of that shame shadow, wanting you to stay in a comfort cage because you're not progressing, you're not doing anything, and usually build those cages out of your lies, out of your fear, out of your pain. There's a lot of negativity cycling right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you really just think of just the physics of it, to have a shadow, you have to have a light. So why not just look there? So that was a big change. Yep.
And one of the other things, April, is that there
Sorry.
is an aspect of addiction to our negative and habitual thoughts that hopefully will help take some of the shame away. It's not your fault. It is not your fault. We actually become addicted and habituated to negative thoughts because it's what we've always done. And it might be something that you learned at home. It might be something that you've learned based on your life circumstances. But it's okay to acknowledge that and to say, now I would like to focus on unlearning this because from a physiological point of view, it's actually better for me, better for my health if I focus on the other aspect of reality, which is the light instead of the shadow, the good instead of the bad. Now, we're not saying be Pollyanna, put rose-colored glasses on and see everything as positive. Listen, disaster is not positive. It is not, you cannot say, well, I'm just so happy that, that person died because they're in a better place now. That is terrible. That is a terrible way to deal with grief. I'm not suggesting, April's not suggesting that you somehow subdue, suppress, repress any emotions. They all you got to feel it to heal it. But what I am saying is that when negativity and victimness becomes the default, you don't even know that you're doing that sometimes, and it doesn't serve you. Even if it's habitual, even if it's what you've always done. And sometimes we do that as a means of controlling outcome. I know exactly how things will go if I am negative about everything and if I take the victim role here. It's very uncomfortable to step outside of that. There was a part of me that really wanted to wallow in the poor me of 2020. And it's never just the year, that 1 year of awful. There are always circumstances that lead up to many of the circumstances that happen in your really awful year. We all have, I've had several of those really like historically awful years. So have you. And it's never just that one tiny little time frame, right? There's always things that have happened before that have led to that, and things, consequences that will happen after. So, it's like it was a really, really, really hard time. And there were moments of just feeling so righteous about my pity, my self pity. And that's okay. I had those moments, but I had to put some effort into bringing myself back to myself, back into thriving for the sake of my health, for the sake of my relationships, for the sake of my children who were watching this all unfold, right? It's not about looking strong, it's about finding your strength. And that's what I want people to understand, is that you have the capacity to do that. Thoughts are the hardest things to change, but they are changeable.
Exactly. They are changeable. And that is the story here of the Beacon of Light podcast, is to find that hope, to find that pinpoint in the darkness, stretching forward to change ideas, to help each other. And so within your book, Testing Positive, that 30-second, take a time to read it and change the mindset over time can happen. So, Sylvia, where is the best place to get this book?
Amazon's got it, and that's probably the best place to get it. If you happen to be living in Manitoba, I can snag you a copy and sign it for you. But if you're living far away, then Amazon is probably your best bet.
Awesome. I hope that you guys can remember this beautiful conversation here, and that in the positivity, as we start to change and control those thoughts, really your physical life can change. How you feel from illness to healing can change. There's so many different outcomes, and really what a wonderful time that we live in to start practicing this, to try it out, to test the waters. And so it's such a great thing. Thank you so much, Sylvia. This is a beautiful conversation about all of this. And so please go to Amazon, grab her book. Let's put it up here again, Testing Positive, and to remember that that positivity can help calm in the chaos of life. That positivity can be that little pinpoint that you can anchor yourself towards. That positivity, you can create one positive thought every day. What happens if you create a lot? Just really think about that. Thank you all for joining and participating and being part of the Beacon of Light podcast tonight. Sylvia, thank you again. You've been a beautiful guest here, and we are so glad that this message of positivity, we are kind of in a new 4-year cycle. Hopefully, we can bank on this and remember that when the negativity starts, just takes one positivity and then another and another. And please connect with Sylvia. You've seen running on the ticker underneath here a way to contact her. And she is so willing to help so many of you out there. So come connect with her. Again, grab that book on Amazon. And thank you for being a part of the program tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We'll see you all, and have a great evening.